almost entirely finished anyway. So yeah. So if you have finished the quiz, the grade that you have right now is the grade that you can keep. However, if you want to tighten up your grade or maybe try for a higher grade, like if you're right on a plus or a minus boundary and you want to boost that up, the optional final is there for you. So the study guide is already up. Sunday, I am going to post a review session online. I'm going to record it. I'm going to go through item by item. Just a reminder, there are no short answers for these finals. It's only multiple choice. The exam is on a Wednesday. Grades are due on Thursday. I do not have time to go through a bunch of short answer questions because I got 2 exams to give on Wednesday and 9 papers to grade. So I have a lot on my plate. So multiple choice, no short answer, and you are allowed to bring in a cheat sheet with you. Yay, cheat sheet. It can be handwritten or typed. It's all right. No need to, don't share with your classmates, but it's allowed to be front and back. And I might give out a special surprise for whoever has the smallest handwriting that I can still see. So right now, can I get a head count? Because I've got to make copies on Monday. How many of you, okay, if you are on the fence about the final, raise your hand as well. I would rather have too many copies than not enough copies. So who is planning on taking the final or is on the fence? Okay, raise them high so I can count everybody. Okay, I've got 4. I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I will probably make about 15 copies. That's about half of the class right there. Worst case scenario, more of you come in than I bargained for. I'll just quickly take a master's copy and just make a copy in the lounge, in the faculty mailboxes. So yeah. I think it's going to be really good. Folks, if I don't see you at the final, I had a fantastic semester. For those of you that are freshmen, I hope that this was a good introduction to CAUTI, and I hope you had a wonderful time. And I know that quite a few of you are going to be in my classes next semester, so I look forward to seeing you. And if you aren't in my classes, that is okay. I am sure I will say hi to you when I see you. Also, it's the last day of my 30s. So thank you for spending it with me. My birthday is tomorrow. I'm actually kind of excited. And yet at the same time, I'm like, uh-oh, average lifespan is about 80. Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. Okay. We need to get out of the existential dread. Okay. All right. Woo. Woo! Okay, and if you're coming to late night breakfast tonight, I will be there.
I'm so excited. I want that final so bad.
Okay. All right. So let's talk some more. Let's talk some more about a happy topic: psychological disorders. Okay. Whatever I do not finish, these notes are in full, so take a look at them, and I might send you some links to some things that I've previously recorded. Okay. Wow, this sweater's really hot. And yes, look, it saved the blue. Anna's eyes are so happy. Okay, so the last time we were here, we were talking about phobias. So could somebody tell me a phobia? Heidi, are you afraid of spiders?
Yeah, I don't like them.
Okay, now if there were a spider in this classroom, what would you do?
I'd tell someone to kill it.
Okay, would you run out of the room though?
I would go away from it. I probably wouldn't run out of the
Okay, so maybe that's not a phobia. Maybe it's just a simple fear. There's definitely a difference between the two. Yeah, Aurora.
Definitely has a phobia of heights. If
Yeah.
he gets 1 or 2 steps up on a ladder, he starts shaking and turns white.
Oh, yeah, that'd probably be a phobia. Kenna, I saw your hand as well.
I don't know. I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but isn't like the fear of long words, the word for the fear of long words, super long?
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. I was going to say there are lots of long words to describe people who use long words. Sesquipedalian.
Oh, I like that.
Why is the English language like that?
Because it's awesome and it comes from German.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Are you ready for this? I'm going to try to read this. Hippopotmonstrosesquipedaliophobia.
Yep, they did that on purpose.
Yes, they did. Technically, the more technical term is sesquipedalophobia because sesquipedalian means long words.
That's terrible. They just added the first person to make it longer.
Yeah, that's a joke. It's like that's like saying that supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is a real word. I'm like, debatable. All right. So anybody have any other fears? Yeah.
I mean, it's not fear, right? I have trypophobia.
Okay, so you don't like the holes. Ooh.
No, can't do it. No.
Yeah, Kuiper.
I have a very big fear of like syringes.
Ooh, yeah. Needles are a pretty common one. Yeah, Cora.
The sensation of free fall.
Ooh, yeah, that's super set. Turbulence is, you probably don't like airplane turbulence.
Actually enjoy airplanes.
Are you kidding me?
I'm the one falling without, like, if I'm in a harness getting ready to go on a zip line that has very little free fall when you're going off a platform, I will freeze and I cannot jump off that platform.
Shaka bra.
However, if I'm in some kind of machine or any other vehicle that is not relying on myself, I do not fear it nearly as much.
Oh, that's interesting. See, I'm sensitive to all of it. That's why I won't go on roller coasters. Like when I was in 9th grade, I had an opportunity to sit next to my crush on a roller coaster. And I did not take that option because I was too scared. One of my greatest regrets.
You could have had his equate the exhilaration.
And haven't studied psychology yet. This is why studying psychology is important, people. Now, having said that, if I had made different choices, I wouldn't be where I am today. So maybe it's better I didn't get on that roller coaster. Okay.
But yeah, I am jumping off the platform. I don't like the sense of free fall. It's to the point where if I am on roller skates and there is an opportunity for me to fall, I will be absolutely terrified of falling and hold on to the wall until I do fall. And once I fall, I'm okay.
Okay.
But before that, I am terrified of the sensation of free fall.
I would also take it you don't like ice skating for similar reasons.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
For that exact reason is why I don't do skiing.
Oh gosh. Skiing is falling all the time. And I've got the really bad habit. I got the bad habit of holding up my poles in the air. I'm like, I stay on the bunny slope because I'm a wimp.
The last time I went skiing, I almost fell.
I feel like I'm getting.
Claustrophobia, that's another one. Yeah, that's really hard, especially if you're doing MRI research. Okay, so a specific phobia is going to be focused on a particular object or a situation. A social phobia or social anxiety is kind of an intense fear and avoidance of social situations. So a few people, I forgot to bring the exams with me, but I'll grab them at the end. I'll end class a little early so I can grab them if you'll just sit tight. So a few people actually missed the question on social anxiety or social phobia. So here's the thing. Social anxiety is all about worry about being evaluated or judged by people. So it is fear of negative evaluation. Agoraphobia was also, I believe, in that question, or there was a similar question. So agoraphobia often tends to happen with panic disorder. So the thing is that for a lot of people, or at least for some people, panic attacks do not always have solid, obvious triggers. So when I would occasionally have panic attacks, mine did not necessarily have an obvious trigger. I've had them in the car, which is not too bad because you can roll down the window and just have that cold air hit your face. That actually really helps. It's happened in public places. It has happened at work while I'm lecturing, which is probably the most horrifying thing of all. And I have canceled class a couple of times because I'm like, I can't focus. I need to leave. So this hasn't happened in a while, thankfully, but when you don't have obvious triggers for panic attacks, your mind is going to want to look for patterns. That's what we do. We look for patterns. And for a lot of people, these panic attacks will happen in public places, which are very attention getting and a little bit terrifying as well. So what we find is with a lot of people that have panic disorder, they also have a comorbid. So comorbid meaning that they occur together. They have agoraphobia. They have fear of being out in public and being out in situations that produce panic. So it's almost like their mind goes, I have panic attacks in public. Therefore, if I don't leave my house, I am going to be okay. So I want to talk a little bit about obsessive compulsive disorder. So let's be very clear about what OCD is and what it is not. OCD is not being neat and tidy. When you are very particular about having things a certain way or in a certain order, that is not obsessive compulsive disorder. It might be obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is not the same. However, obsessive compulsive disorder, this used to be considered an anxiety disorder because it is characterized by these unwanted, obtrusive, repetitive thoughts, obsessions. You cannot stop thinking about them. And oftentimes these obsessions are going to be really distressing for people. They're going to think, oftentimes these obsessions will have inappropriate content, things potentially related to things like sex or cleanliness or lack of cleanliness or things like that. Or they'll think about harm coming to other people, people that they care about, or potentially harm to themselves. So these thoughts can be really, really distressing. And because they're obsessions, you can't necessarily get rid of them very easily. They're very intrusive. So one of the things that a lot of people do to reduce their anxiety is they engage in these ritualistic behaviors. Sometimes they're related to the obsession, sometimes they're not, but they may do things like washing. They may count things. They may count to a certain number and they'll only feel okay if they count to a certain number. They may check things again and again. And the idea is that you do these rituals to reduce the anxiety that you feel. So I want to be clear about a couple of things, especially when we're talking about checking. How many of you have had it happen where you set your alarm to go to bed and you check it to make sure? Or you walk out the door and you're like, oh my gosh, did I leave my straightener on? Or did I leave the iron on? Or did I leave the stove on? And you go back and check. And sometimes maybe you'll check more than once. That is not obsessive compulsive disorder. Remember, our 3 Ds. This is not necessarily deviant. This is not necessarily distressing, and it's not dysfunctional. However, if you are checking to the point where you are not getting a good night's sleep, or you are checking so much that you are late for work or late for class or things like that, or if you can't feel good until you check something on a repeated basis, that is probably going to be more indicative of something like obsessive compulsive disorder. So we now characterize this as an impulse control disorder, particularly with issues kind of relating to the frontal lobe and its connections to the amygdala. But there's still a lot more that we need to learn. Now, if you want to see an example of OCD in a movie, and I would mention that this is an actor portraying this that probably has not struggled with OCD. There's a movie that came out in 1997, As Good as It Gets. It has Jack Nicholson. He is basically this cantankerous, awful, like mean-spirited, unpleasant writer, and he struggles with OCD. So when he does everything 5 times. When he gets into his apartment, he checks the locks 5 times. He washes his hands with 5 different bars of soap. He will not step on cracks on the sidewalk. and he brings plastic cutlery to his favorite restaurant because he is very, very worried about cleanliness and germs. So that's a really good example of OCD, but I would mention that I do not believe that Jack Nicholson has OCD. I believe if you watch the TV show Girls, or if you've heard of the TV show Girls, or you know who Lena Dunham is, Girls, especially halfway through the series, starts to be a little bit more about the main character struggles with OCD, and the actress who portrays her actually has struggled with OCD in the past. So those are some pretty interesting portrayals of this disorder. Okay, PTSD. So it was previously believed that PTSD was specifically something that you only had to worry about if you were involved in military combat. And that is not necessarily the case. Post-traumatic stress disorder is now considered a trauma disorder. It is a response to trauma. Now, one thing that I will mention is that exposure to trauma does not guarantee that you will get post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, some people actually have what is called post-traumatic growth. They learn to basically rise above that trauma. We started hearing more about that during the pandemic, especially when the pandemic started. And it's not that I disagree with it, but it kind of unsettled me the way that a lot of people were like, this is a good time to learn a new skill. You can learn how to do this or do this. And I'm like, can we let people respond to the losses before we start telling them to be productive? And don't get me wrong, y'all, have you met me? I am like the most positive person on earth in a lot of ways. But even then I'm like, why can't we just let people feel how they feel for a little bit and then start being like, let's learn a new skill. So I thought it was kind of interesting that a lot of the post-traumatic growth talk started when the pandemic started happening. And let's be really clear, some people came out of the pandemic in a pretty good headspace. Not everybody did. However, trauma does not necessarily mean that you're going to get PTSD. So PTSD is marked by flashbacks. So often re-experiencing an event. If you've heard a little bit about something called complex PTSD, it is not in the DSM, but it is in other diagnostic manuals in other countries. CPTSD often is not going to result from big traumas with a capital T, but little traumas that are repeated over time, like growing up in an emotionally invalidating family, repeated exposure to bullying, a variety of different things can cause CPTSD. But PTSD includes things like flashbacks. If it's CPTSD, you might actually experience an emotional flashback. So you're not necessarily remembering the event, but it's bringing up emotions that you felt from a previous state. Things like nightmares, social withdrawal, jumpiness, insomnia. A lot of these people are going to be really irritable and on edge. This is actually more likely in women than it is in men. However, I would also argue that some of this is due to the way that here, if you identify as female versus identifying as male, there are different ways that you are expected to behave in this culture. And one thing that we don't necessarily do a very good job with when it comes to men is teaching them to talk about their feelings in an appropriate and healthy way and seeking help for issues. So some of this could be a legitimate difference. I would also argue some of this is probably a socialization issue. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we get anxiety disorders in the first place. So first of all, let's take a learning perspective. So for some of us, our anxieties or our phobias are due to things that have happened to us that we have learned from, or learning by watching other people. So for example, if your only exposure to rats and mice is that rat from Lady and the Tramp, you are probably not going to have a really good view of rats. That rat looked like a monster. Like, no, a rat is not going to eat a baby. Like, I don't know why they set it up like that. Oh my gosh, it's a rat. Yeah, they're like this big. It's gonna be fine. So some of our anxieties could be due to learning and experience. Oh, sorry, I got too excited. Oh, wait, you have full notes. What am I doing? But I'll still wait for you to write. Yeah, Cora.
Only one who's more under.
I'm more unnerved by the racism now, yes. Like, this is where I say the thing that you're supposed, it was a different time. Doesn't make it okay. It was a different time. Yikes.
I think it's okay to acknowledge the fact that like it never would have gotten past like a brainstorming table.
The Aristocats would be very similar.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, you don't like the movie, just acknowledge that it has some problematic elements. Okay, you can like stuff that is problematic, just be aware that it's problematic.
Acknowledge it.
If we're talking, well, I think it depends at some point.
There's also a big difference between aristocrat and I actually would probably absolutely point out some of the differences. It's more obvious in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like in Aristocats, it's like one character, if you cut that scene out, then it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really easy to not see
Uh-huh.
versus Lady in the Tramp was.
Right there. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So in addition to learning and conditioning, we also can take a biological perspective. So first of all, we know that anxiety disorders do tend to run in families. Additionally, we also know that if you have certain types of neurodivergences, we know that anxiety disorders are often more common. Some of this could be due to genetics or biology. And some of this could be due to the fact that if you're neurodivergent, you are navigating a world that was probably not built with your needs in mind, and you're a little bit different, and that can make it a little bit stressful, maybe a lot stressful.
Mental disorders can be kind of buy one, get one free.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's actually kind of interesting in my family. I, for the longest time, was the only one in the family that really struggled with anxiety. Most of my family tends to have more mood disorders and addictions. So I'm like here and I'm like, well, it's an issue, but anxiety has a lot of nervous energy to it. So at least I got a lot of fight in me. And my sister called me a couple of years ago and she goes, have you ever taken Buspar? And this is something that's specific for generalized anxiety disorder. It's not really very habit forming. And for some people, it works great. Other people, it really doesn't. And I go, yeah, I took it for a year. Why? And she's like, I just got diagnosed with situational anxiety for driving. And I'm like, well, now I know where that came from. It runs in our family as well. So we have some genetic predispositions. Additionally, let's be very clear here. Having anxiety and being afraid of certain things is good for our survival state. Having issues like social anxiety is kind of predicated on the fact that when in our ancestral history, ostracism meant death. If you were kicked out of the group or rejected, you were in a lot of trouble. So I can understand the need in your evolution, like in our evolution, to focus on approval and validation from others. Now, here's another thing that I want to ask you. So I asked you a list of things that you were afraid of. So people mentioned things like heights, people mentioned things like spiders, I'm afraid of snakes. Some people are afraid of claustrophobia. Here's my question, and I want everybody to be 100% honest with me. Is anybody here afraid of cuddly puppies? Is anybody afraid of flowers? Is anybody afraid of snuggly ducks or fluffy blankets? Why am I asking you this? Yes,
You're pointing out the fact that things that we are scared of are often rooted in some sort of protection mechanism.
okay. If you fall from a large height, guess what happens? You're gonna die. If you are in a tightly enclosed space with very little oxygen and you are not rescued, guess what happens? You're gonna die. If you mess around with a poisonous snake, guess what happens? You're gonna die. Okay. But let's be clear, it has to be venomous. It does have to be venomous, but still, you can't always tell. I mean, if you're out in the woods and you don't have like random knowledge of snakes in your head and you see one, are you really going to take a chance that that one's not venomous? Probably not. My point is that we are afraid of things that actually threaten our survival. We are not generally afraid of things that don't. Now, I'm not saying there aren't exceptions. Trypophobia. I don't know the connection with survival there. I saw a woman on Maury Povich who was afraid of pickles once. I don't know how that threatens your survival.
Cats are scared of cucumbers because they look like snakes, so maybe the woman was scared of the pickles.
Note to self, we'll have to try this the next time I get a cat. Okay, so my point is that being afraid of things gives us a survival advantage, and this has been hardwired in us for hundreds of thousands of years. So the thing is, be aware that when you're afraid of something, it's your body basically trying to be like, I'm trying to stay alive here, and be grateful that you have that. If you didn't have that, we'd be like, hey, let's go jump off a cliff. It'll be fun. We would be dead as a species very, very quickly if that were the case. But here's the thing. Learning and biology does not explain everything. So up until maybe about 10 to 15 years ago, the most common psychological disorder that you would be diagnosed with was depression. Now it's an anxiety disorder. So anxiety disorders are on the rise, especially for y'all, like younger millennials and Gen Z. Y'all are struggling. You're like, yes, tell me about it. Now, why do you think it's increasing? And I want to be really clear about something. This was also true pre-pandemic. So the pandemic did accelerate a lot of things, but this has been the case for a little while. Do you have any thoughts on why that might be? Yeah, Danny. Uncertainty. There's a lot more precariousness in the world, isn't there? Yeah, Kenna.
It's like, yeah. It's gotten to a point where, they're, especially a lot of people in our generation, we don't necessarily have a very bright future, both economic wise and also climate wise.
Okay. Cora?
We have had a lot of access to internet and social media.
Yeah.
Great.
I was
So
gonna
we're
say,
constantly
y'all
aware.
have no idea what it was like in the before times, like before internet. It's part of the reason why I don't always like lumping myself in with millennials, because technically I am one. I am right where kind of millennial starts, but I knew what things were like pre-internet. Like I've been having advising meetings. When I was in college, our catalog was an actual book. That does not happen anymore. Yeah.
I think on top of that, like growing up on the internet, and literally growing up, having access to all this stuff, also watching like what our parents were going through. Like, I know I was really little for the recession, but I still saw how it affected my mom
Yeah.
and having to deal with their stress on top of the stress of what's gonna happen to us in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you're that age, it's almost harder because you do not understand what's going on, but you can understand that there is tension.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of an insecure place to start.
Okay. I saw Luca and then Grace and Lily.
Grace first.
Oh, Grace first? Okay.
I just think it's not as taboo as it once was. Like
to talk about your mental health. And that is very true. That is very true. Like one of the things I appreciate about y'all is that I can be kind of open and honest about certain things and y'all won't be like, that's too personal, Dr. Gilchrist. You talk to some older folks, they will tell you, oh, we didn't struggle with anxiety or depression. Yes, they did. It's just that it was kept very, very quiet. Yeah. Y'all, how many standardized tests did you get in a year?
Grade and we were doing research on the like Renaissance period, like the Dark Ages and like the Black Plague.
Fourth grade?
Yeah.
Let's learn about friends.
We watched a very detailed and graphic video of an enactment of the Black Plague, and I think that is the reason why I have trypophobia, because I have a severe fear of sickness and disease. And so like that whole, like that all stemmed from then, and like
Wow.
why is that the content we're showing tiny children, especially like gory graphic images like that? Like it was really
I don't, yeah.
Y'all start watching the Twin Tower videos because mine was in person.
I was gonna say, and I'm gonna say a thing. I get that watching it is really traumatic. It's scarier living through it. And I at least have the benefit of being 18 years old when it happened. So I was a little more adult. My sister was in high school. My cousins were in elementary school. That can really mess you up. Like, and I get that looking at those images that you don't quite understand, that's a huge deal though. Lily? Oh, yeah, you have to make a concerted effort to kind of shut it off. Yeah, Carrie.
My mom was in college at the time.
Yeah.
Her friend took a trip to New York.
No. Oh.
Thankfully they weren't in Florida. They did like.
Oh, no, I was in Florida and at the time, our governor was the brother of the current president. And so, and the president on that day was in Florida reading books to kindergartners. So we in Florida were worried that we were going to be next. And that sounds really silly in hindsight. Like, why would they come to Florida? But there was so much uncertainty in terms of what was going on. And folks, like, the video footage, you could actually, I'm really sorry, I'm worried I'm about to trigger people. Like, they didn't have a really good handle on what they should show and what they shouldn't show. And you could see people jumping from the tower just so they wouldn't have to, yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot that day. Yeah.
Some things extending on that. One, my parents were actually out of the country
Uh-huh.
and they were about to fly back.
Oh, no.
They were in Scotland, actually.
Uh-huh.
Second thing was that we actually have a family tradition of watching documentaries on 9/11, starting from when I was actually pretty much never really missed one, actually.
Oh, wow. That's a lot for a kid.
Well, my parents always talked to me as if I was as a mature adult.
Oh,
So
that can be good in some ways, that can be bad in some others.
and on top of that, I was being read advanced, more advanced than my reading level books every night. Like Harry Potter was my nightly reading material
That's not so bad.
as a 4-year-old.
Oh, I mean, I was reading the Ramona books in kindergarten by myself, to be fair.
That's what childhood's about.
It's like, put a worm in your finger and run around to the teacher, go, see my reading, see my reading.
But they did not coach any of
They
that.
didn't let y'all be kids.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Danny. Huh? What? Oh. Oh.
When they ran the orange shooter girls and they had someone acted
The worst part was like,
One time my class
they
was
used to be airsoft guns, because they had like little like big guns they could bring in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stress to put on a kid. That's a lot of stress to put on a kid. Let's be completely honest.
I did it in the tiny classroom bathroom as a kindergartner. That was your first
I
experience.
think all of these reasons are showing us that yes, like oh my God, I totally forgot about this. When I was in elementary school, I did a presentation on Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
In elementary school.
Sandy Hook happened, yeah.
I did research about this teacher and I was giving a presentation about what a hero she was. When I had just been that same age of kids, like.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna be completely honest. I think one thing that millennials don't always do really well when it comes to Gen Z is we talk about how we've had it so much tougher than y'all. And let's be very clear, in some ways, I would like, most of us came of age during 9/11. We went through we were put into a war situation very quickly. We got the recession and most of us came of age and were getting jobs during that recession. And then we got a pandemic. However, and I'm like, yeah, that's a lot, but y'all were living through a lot of that too. And at least we were young adults with the capability to understand a little bit more. Y'all were kids. And kids don't always have the capability of understanding what they're going through. And the thing is, when you're young, you get these tape loops that are put in and maybe you didn't put them there, but you've been playing them so long that suddenly they become yours. And I feel like on that level, like I can't do, like they can make fun of me for being a millennial with my side parted hair and my skinny jeans and stuff like that. However, I don't want to turn it into a competition because I would say living through it is bad, but living through it and not being able to fully understand why is probably worse. I have a lot, I gotta say, I have a lot of respect for y'all, like just in general. Like, I feel like despite the fact that you've been through a lot, like as a generation, I feel like you have a really good head on your shoulders.
I think the discussion, a huge part, just my parents having those discussions with me as if I was more mature than I was actually playing into my understanding of what was happening sometimes. Because if I had a question, they would answer it and not say, oh, you won't understand. We would sit down and have that talk and go, so this is kind of what's going on. And here's what's happening emotionally, here's what you're supposed to be expecting. And then here's all this, and then there's the why question. Why do you think it's happening? How do you feel? So it was a three-way conversation on all sides on how you feel and why do we think it's.
That's really interesting. And I think a lot of people, including a lot of adults, don't have the capacity to process it that way.
That is what was happening. And then on top of that, one of a large conflict at the moment is politics. And one of the things is that we sit down at the dinner table and that is a nightly discussion.
Wow, that's a lot.
During the election rounds.
Yeah.
We were actually, I had a political science class. And I would come to class with my table discussions from my home.
Wow.
My teacher would actually turn to me and ask, okay, what did you guys talk about at the dinner table last night? And I would bring it in and I would start the discussion.
Wow. So I realized that we've gotten a lot kind of off track. I really appreciate this discussion. I think it's, I feel like this is a meaningful discussion. And so if we've kind of lost time because of that, I don't think that's a bad thing. I was going to say, yeah, but I was going to say talking about psychological disorders is already not the happiest of topics, but I just want to let you know that like, I don't always understand how other people kind of process things. And so sometimes when like, I think it's really important to get into somebody else's shoes. So this is really helpful for me because I'm going to be completely honest when it comes to like grades and life and stuff in general. I am very much I'm going to pull myself up by the bootstraps. And that's just me personally. I try not to apply that to other people. But I think sometimes when I see other people struggling, I'm like, well, I did it. Why can't they do it? This kind of perspective is really helpful for me. And I hope it's helpful for you too, if you're kind of trying to figure out why other people can't do what you do or why you can't do what other people do. It's because we have these different perspectives. Empathy and getting into other people's shoes is going to be really vital for that. So I appreciate this because it gives me a better understanding of how y'all operate. Okay. Hey.
Let's get into it.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is probably gonna be one of the more controversial topics. Yay?
We love a little spice in a lecture.
Yeah, but I'm not really. Did you have to do the shoulder shimmy? Oh, goodness.
You gotta get the look.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk about dissociative disorder. So let's be very clear. Everyone dissociates at a given point in time. If you are reading a really good book or playing a video game and you lose track of time, that is technically dissociating. If you drive somewhere really familiar and you get out of the car and you don't know how you got there, congratulations, you dissociated. Yes. I do that if I can't sleep, so it's not unheard of.
Staring into mirrors. And then doing a third person kind of thing. For a solid 10
See, I don't know. I will tell you, I stare in the mirror a lot, but I'm just like, ooh, oh, I look good today.
I get lost in my
mirror, and I was very good, and
Oh, I do the thing where I like, if I have two mirrors near each other, I'm like, ooh, I can see into infinity. The mirror monster is coming for me.
There's a really cool, like optical, I guess it's an optical illusion, but if the lights are really dim and you look at yourself in the mirror long enough, that has been shown to like make it a lot more likely that you will kind of dissociate, but like you'll start to see features that aren't there.
Yeah.
And you won't recognize yourself, but it's the lighting and the. I like doing that right now.
All right. So with dissociation, this is something that everybody does, but a dissociative disorder is a response to trauma often. So this is a case where we have our conscious awareness basically separating from painful memories, from thoughts, and from feelings. So oftentimes with these people, you will see an identity change of some kind, or a loss of memory for a particular point when that dissociation occurs. So we have 3 different types of dissociative disorders. We're largely going to talk about the first one, and that's going to be a little bit controversial. Yeah, I am skeptical. I am not cynical. I am skeptical. I'm skeptical. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I am saying I need more evidence. I'm very skeptical about it, but that's not saying that I don't think people don't have it.
I think it sounds too like fantastical.
Well, so here's the thing though. Well, we'll talk a little bit about why there's some skepticism about it. However, what I will say is something that does give me a little bit more less skepticism is the fact that we do have things like dissociative amnesia, and we have things like dissociative fugue. So folks, I can tell you, there are things that I have absolutely blocked out because of trauma. The semester that I was very badly bullied in 6th grade, I remember very little during that time. It is a blur. There have been other instances that I do not remember and have actively blocked because they are too painful. And the fact that that happened, I'm like, whoa. So I've been saying that memory suppression doesn't really happen during trauma. And I'm like, this is happening to me. I can't be like, it's not real. I have to be like, it can be real, but we need to have an air of skepticism. So the fact that dissociative amnesia and dissociative fugue exist and are documented does give a little bit more credence to something like dissociative identity disorder. So dissociative amnesia is basically you not having a memory for a certain time that's traumatic. A dissociative fugue, you will basically change your whole identity, lose your memory of your past self, and oftentimes you will head to a brand new place and take on a brand new identity. And sometimes you will have spontaneous recovery of those memories, but not always. And then we have dissociative identity disorder, previously known as multiple personality disorder. It is not the same as schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a little bit different, and I'm not going to have time to talk about it today, so I will send you a video link. So whatever I don't cover here, if you're planning on taking the final, I will give you, so the notes are in full. Additionally, I will give you a link to previous lectures on this. Okay, so dissociative identity disorder was originally called multiple personality disorder. It is marked by 2 or more distinct alternating personalities that are referred to as alters. These have to be significantly different from the original personality. They are going to have different mannerisms or behavior. And what's critical is that prior to diagnosis, the original personality is unaware that those alters are present and are taking over. When they take over, the original personality is going to have gaps in their memory. Now, the reason that there's skepticism about DID, because we're not going to have time to talk about it, so I'll tell you while you're writing this down. By and large, we only hear about this in the Western Hemisphere and the United States in particular. Additionally, after movies like The Three Faces of Eve and the book Sybil, which were both instances of multiple personality disorders that were basically very heavily publicized, the number of alters that people report having kind of exploded. So with a lot of people that originally had DID, maybe they had 2, maybe they had 3. Now you'll hear about somebody having about 12 different alters. Additionally, at least in the case of Sybil, we know that the actual woman who reported these multiple personalities had a very unhealthy codependent relationship with their therapist, and additionally was taking drugs like truth serum, like pentobarbital or phenobarbital. Those can be really habit forming, and they also leave you very open to suggestion. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this because we got to go, and I'm going to go